This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
This is A Different Perspective with Kevin Randle. A retired U.S. Lieutenant Colonel, Kevin Randle has been studying UFOs for nearly 50 years. Kevin has investigated some of the most famous UFO cases in the world and has been consulted for dozens of documentaries about UFOs. Considered one of the leading experts into the Roswell UFO crash of 1947, Kevin has written more than 25 books about UFOs, including the recently published Roswell in the 21st Century. Now, here is the host of A Different Perspective, Kevin Randle.
Good evening. And as I say, we are back after 167 hours, and I say that because I forgot to turn off the stopwatch on my iPad, which I use to time the segments, and it was right at 167 hours, which struck me as funny for some reason, and I don't know why. But it did. Anyway, I'm joined by my guest, Adam Dew, whom you might say is the force behind the Roswell Slides, which were initially claimed to show the body of an alien creature. Working with Don Schmitt and Tom Carey, the slides were slowly released into the world in a series of announcements and teases. This culminated in the BeWitness presentation in Mexico City on May 5th, 2016. Literally within hours, maybe that was 2015, we'll check that. Literally within hours, it was discovered that the image on the slides was that of a child who had died in the desert southwest of the United States several hundred years ago. The slides had been taken in a museum sometime prior to May of 1947, which eliminated the Roswell crash as the source. It is now nearly universally accepted that the image in the slides is a mummy. And I say nearly universally accepted. Dew has described himself this way, quoting him, "I can shepherd any video project from outline to final product. The bulk of my work is in quick turn, on-site shooting, editing, sports marketing, and corporate videos, and all of the types of all types and sizes." You hear some chuckling in the background. I believe that was Adam Dew because he knows where I got that. He says, "I also own varsitytape.com, although I'm not sure that's still true, which is Chicago-based but helps high school athletes across the country create high-end recruiting videos." Adam Dew, was I correct on that?
I absolutely still help kids with their efforts to become college athletes. I don't know why you would think that was not still the case.
I was curious about the varsitytape.com. That's still a viable site, and is it still based in Chicago, I guess is where I was coming from.
Yeah, the company's based in Chicago. We work with a lot of different high school sports teams and do recruiting videos. That's what Varsity Tape is. Are you I don't know why you would think that was not the case anymore.
Only because I thought you were no longer in Chicago. That's why I thought.
Oh.
Anyway,
Right.
Adam Dew, welcome to A Different Perspective.
Hi, Kevin.
We have now told everybody who you are. Basically, the Roswell Slides is your claim to fame here on this program, anyway.
Right.
And we'll just get started with this right away. Briefly, because we don't have a lot of time, what was the origin of the slides? How did they come into your possession?
All right, I did go back through my notes in my effort to be prepared for you today, Kevin. So the first time I saw the pictures was in July of 2012. Joseph Beeson was the owner of the slides at the time. His sister had given them to Joseph and had they wanted Joseph to take them wherever they could go, essentially. We knew he had something interesting, and there was an interesting story to tell, and Joseph was entrusted by his sister to do that. And Joseph was not in the business of telling those types of stories. And so Joseph knew that I had done some work with Joseph in the past, and he brought me down to his office and said, "Hey, take a look at what I've got." And I was, needless to say, very intrigued from the start.
Well, the question I have from here, the story had always been that she had a business cleaning out houses in estates and things like that, and she found the slides in one of those estates. Is that correct?
Yes. So Catherine, Joseph's sister, her job, she had a small business. It was a haul-away business where they would be called to, and after an estate sale, whatever was left over, that sort of stuff, to clean out a house before, to clean it out, basically, to get rid of everything that was left and to haul it off to the dump. And Catherine was a bit of a pack rat herself. Most of the stuff she would dump, and this time she decided to look into this box, and she found about approximately 400 slides that we found out later ranged from around the 1940s through the late 1950s, based on the cardboard borders on the slides.
Okay. I don't understand why you or Joe Beeson would think that these were something alien. The image on the slide was something alien.
Well, the slides, when you look at them with no context, they're not that interesting to me. If someone, I've always told people, friends of mine who knew I was involved in this, that had no interest in UFOs or aliens, why I was doing this. I said, if someone had come to me with those two body slides, I never would have gotten involved with this. To me, it was the context of looking at the other 300 some slides and trying to put the whole thing into a story. And why would this elderly woman, we later realized was Hilda Blair Ray, and we started learning about her life and what an interesting person she was. Why would she have these two body slides? Why did she separate them out from the rest of the slides? And try to take that story to its end. That was always the goal.
Why did we make the leap to alien, though? That's what I don't understand.
Well, when I looked at the slides as someone who had zero background in UFOs or aliens, to me, the slides look like what I have been trained by popular culture to think look like an alien. They don't. It's the large head, the large eye sockets, the skinny body, the emotionless sort of slit face, very, almost no tone for the nose, the sort of bulbous eyes, and again, we couldn't figure out why Hilda would have these two slides and why she would separate them out. But to me, the physical traits of the body looked like an alien. And even when we started to do 3D renderings of the body, as you see in the trailer that you've seen before for the documentary we were working on, when we started to do 3D renderings, it again, I'm no psychologist, but when we started to do those renderings, that body started to take shape and it didn't look human to us.
But wasn't it obviously in a museum setting when you see the whole slide?
It was certainly on display somewhere. Your friend Don Schmitt, when we would have these conversations amongst ourselves where, and we did ask these questions amongst ourselves. Why would this exist? One of Don's suggestions at one point was that it was a military museum of some type. And you start to get into the Jackie Gleason stories of him being shown a secret museum by Nixon and like these things.
Wait. You've gone off on a tangent. You've gotten to a point that I wanted to go to later, but since you brought it up, let's go with that. You say Don Schmitt was talking about it being in a military museum?
Yes.
That he saw the entire slide. I mean, he saw a good, high quality slide and could tell it was some kind of museum.
It's one of the big misunderstandings out there about the slides is that people were never shown the original slides. It's a revisionist history. I've got video of everyone seeing the slides on multiple occasions in multiple settings, and part of the confusion arises from the fact that there are two slides. But when I show the slides to people, I show them three slides. I show them the slide with Hilda, what I think is Hilda, standing in the background behind the glass case, and then I show the second slide with the man with the hand in his pocket, which is the second slide, and then the third slide I show is an enhanced version. I forget which one of the two slides we enhanced, but it's the one that shows the most detail in the body. And what you do is, because it was a dark setting and Kodachrome was not good in indoor lighting, we brought the whites up on one of the slides to show more detail in the body. Now, when you do that, that's why the placard is blown out in that third slide. I was not trying to hide anything. It is simply the effect of brightening the picture is why that slide appears blown out. We were not trying to hide anything. And just to get to some of that, let me get to some of the critical sort of points of contention in this that, a lot of this is because I let Tony Bragalia go off the rails for so long. But the placard that was sent to Rudiak et al. Was a drum scanned high resolution version of one of the placards. That's why we cut one of the slides out of the cardboard to begin with, was to read the slide. And we did that in 2012. And in 2012, which is before Smart D-Blur came out, we wanted to read the slide because we knew that would solve everything. And so we send that slide out. We give that cutout of the placard to everybody we could find that was interested in taking a look, including experts from Adobe and experts from Photoshop, which was not in your book, people that looked at the slides and examined them and told me in their professional opinion that it could not be read.
Okay, the thing I want to ask is, according to Don Schmitt and Tom Carey, they didn't see the second slide until Mexico City.
Nonsense.
You're saying they did see it.
Of course.
Did they actually see the physical slides, or did they see scans of the slides? Did they see the actual slides?
I have video of them sitting around a table with Jaime Maussan looking at the slides on a 17-inch iMac, all of the slides, and also looking at the physical slides on a light table.
So they saw the physical slides.
Yes.
And they knew there were two of them.
Yes.
And they knew it was a museum setting.
It was one of Don's suggestions.
Okay.
It was, again, to me, it was, you're going to focus on the very particulars of how could I be so stupid as to think that was an alien. It is. No. It's what everyone does. Everyone in retrospect says, "Oh, how could you be so stupid?" Like, in the moment, in the time when you want something. And everybody in this wanted something. This is key that you didn't get into this because I think it strikes too close to the bone for you, Kevin, is that everybody wanted, everybody in this.
I have no dog in this fight.
You do.
I have no dog in this fight.
The Roswell dog is, you're part of that dog, Kevin. It's one of your babies, and everybody
Did you read Roswell in the 21st Century?
I read, I didn't have a chance to read all of it, but I did read some of it. And yes, I know you come out as more of a skeptic this time, but it's still your baby. It's still something.
Well, I would argue that point with you because I really had no dog in this fight, and I'm not going any specific direction. I want to make sure I have the information correct from what you're saying, because it varies with what Don Schmitt says and what Tom Carey says. And I'm not saying who's telling the truth and who's lying here. I'm merely trying to get your version of the story as opposed to their versions of the story.
Sure.
So that's really that's my mission here. That's my only mission here.
Well, if your mission was to tell the truth, Kevin, you should have come and spoken to me sooner.
I
made the effort to try to reach you, actually, and Don discouraged it. You and Don had a beef at some point, on multiple occasions, I asked Don if I could contact you, and he said it was not necessary.
Okay, let's go the other way. I asked Tom Carey specifically, can I contact you? I knew who Joe Beeson was long before any of this came out. I knew his name. I had found him in Chicago, and I could have contacted him. And according to Tom, I was told that you or Joe, one of you, maybe both of you, were annoyed that I knew that as much as I did about this, and that that you were going to take your slides and go home.
Tom told you that. Tom told you that, right? That's what you're saying.
Tom or Don told me that if I contacted you and I gave Tom a letter to give to you, telling how I came up about this. I'm sorry, I've misread my clock. I've got to go. We will get back to this right after this. Please stick around.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
We are back with Adam Dew. We're talking about the Roswell Slides. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And when we went away, I was attempting to tell Adam that I had written a long letter to Tom Carey explaining what I knew about the slides and how I got that information, because either Adam, you, or Joe Beeson had accused them of leaking information to me, and that wasn't true. That's not where I'd gotten the information. And they were going, and they were going to stop the collaboration amongst you because of that. So, yes.
That effort never came from us, Kevin. And I've got emails that I'll send you after this conversation that can prove it. And it's everybody involved in this project certainly in one form or another saw dollar signs. This is what I do for a living. This is my business. People complain about my methods in this. I will not have argument with anybody that has an issue with the way I went about this. That's totally fair. Let me keep going. But everybody that's involved in this, and Tom and Don included, at some point or another saw dollar signs, and this was their baby in their minds, and they were going to keep you out of the mix.
Oh, and they did. We met in Chicago. We met in Roswell in 2012, I believe it was, and Tom had approached me to write the Ultimate Roswell book. And I said, great, I've been planning to do that, go through all the information dispassionately and put it out there. And I said, but for the book to work, we need something really new, something spectacular. And I've still got my notes from this. And they just sat there like lumps on the log. Right. I found out at that very same Roswell festival, they had given a copy of the scan to David Rudiak to see if he could decode it. Mm-hmm. My point simply is, they said nothing to me about that. All they had to do was say, yeah, we got something going here. They didn't even say that. It was kind of like, haha, we got something and you don't know it. So, that's where some of that's coming from. And I'm not making any accusations here. I'm really trying to get to the information.
Well, let me give you a little bit of context about my relationship with Tom and Don that has never been put out there before. So I like Don a lot. And Joseph and I, we were sort of doing two things simultaneously in this. Joseph and I were much more interested in the Hilda side of this, to be honest. And we're digging into her background and figuring out that, what her connections were and the life that she lived. And at the same time, we would meet every few months or every 4 months in Kenosha, Wisconsin with Don, which is about halfway between where Don lives and in Chicago. And so we would meet him up there and go through where things are at, and then we would go away. And honestly, from 2012 through 2014, Tom wasn't involved in this very much. But I will say this, I hate to jump around too much, but one of the really interesting things that didn't make your book is that Joseph initially, before I was involved, sent the slides in an email to Stanton Friedman.
I was going to ask you that. I was
he
going
had
to
the
ask you that.
slides.
One
He
of my
said he
questions
doesn't.
here.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of my questions here was: did you or Beeson contact Stanton Friedman first?
We
And
did.
then who?
Well,
And
Joseph did. And Stanton said he does not do investigations anymore, and that we should contact Tom and Don. And Joseph, from my recollection, initially contacted Tom, but because of Chicago and where Don is, we developed more of a relationship with Don. And Don was more involved, and I got to like Don a lot. And I think everybody's interests in this were pretty straightforward and above board, and nothing was rushed. And this was a project that everybody was sort of working on the side. And it wasn't until there started to be some production companies interested, and Jaime Maussan got interested, that like the dollar signs started to, people started to think there'd be some money involved. Trust me, if you add up the hours, nobody made more than a couple bucks an hour on this for sure. But the end result was, people's vested interests started to sort of take shape. And Don and Tom, they have a vested interest in Roswell living on. And I have questions where I've asked Don on video. I said, Don, how do we know this is Roswell? And Don had an explanation, but ultimately it was important for Don to connect it to Roswell because Roswell is important to Don. And
but Don says now in today's environment that he had never said it was connected to Roswell. That was all Tom Carey. And we've got statements by Tom Carey connecting it directly to Roswell. He said the first time he saw the slides, he thought it was the alien as described by Frankie Rowe because of the spot on the head. And so, but Don has said, and we had never gotten into this. When I say we, Don and I had never talked about this prior to the big reveal in Mexico City. He said that he had never said it was Roswell Slides. I don't know who coined the term Roswell Slides. I started calling them the not Roswell Slides,
right?
Because somebody was saying, well, we haven't said that. We haven't connected them to Roswell.
I think it was a naysayer. I think it was a naysayer who initially coined the phrase. I don't know who it was, but we certainly wasn't us.
Well, I coined the phrase not Roswell Slides, so I'll.
Maybe it's your fault, Kevin. Maybe it's all your fault.
No, sure, why not? I don't care. Had you ever heard of the alien autopsy prior to seeing the slides?
I had a very, very rough knowledge of anything related to UFOs before starting this project, and so for me, I was at many points in this, I just felt like I was sort of holding on and letting it take me where it wanted to go. I'm certainly, maybe I could be guilty of letting Tom and Don drive the ship too much at points, I guess.
Well, the reason I asked that question is because according to Tom and Don, the slide film was manufactured in 1947, and they knew that because there was a triangle and a square on the slide on the film.
Yeah, I never said that. Again, this is like, a part of this is Tony's fault and Tom and Don, and the people saying things out of turn, things that people. This is one of the reasons for non-disclosure agreements. It's to keep people silent until we know as much as we can know. And if somebody had asked me at the time, I would have told them that, yes, we had some slides in the collection. We peeled the borders off a few, because we knew that on every given roll of Kodachrome, there is one slide that has those code symbols on it. But you don't know from 1 to 30 which slide in the roll has it on. You'd have to peel off every bit of cardboard to find it. And we have two slides, the two body slides. We peeled off the border from one, and we've shown the edges of that slide. It has no symbols on it. It's not one of the ones that has the symbols on it. We don't know for sure that slide is from 1947. We do not know that.
The reason I bring that up is because that code is wrong. The triangle and square is a code for motion picture film, not for slide film. The codes on slide film was different.
Well, I'll go back and I think you're wrong about that. I remember you writing about that at one point.
Yes, I did.
I will send you an edge of one of my Kodachromes that has the symbols on it that you're talking about. That's okay. But it still turned into some misinformation that was not put out by us. It was put out mostly by Tony Bragalia.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
And it's funny because again, in your book, you've got this chapter about my slides, and I could have cleared up so much of this. You put in these rants by Bragalia word for word, And when we talk about Shane Brook, I found Shane Brook independently of Tony Bragalia. Okay, Tony Bragalia contacted Shane Brook and freaked Shane Brook out. When I contacted him, I don't know, 6 months later, independently, he was like, "Wait, I think I've heard about these slides." He's like, "I'm not having anything to do with this." I had to go back and explain to him that I am not an alien guy. I'm a guy from outside doing this project. I just need him to vet the slides. He wanted nothing to do with this project. I had to talk him off the edge.
Well, I think a lot of the problem came from Tony Bragalia, and I put into my book Tony Bragalia's rants because I thought they were important to show how bad the information was that was leaking into the public arena and where it was coming from.
You tell a story about Nick Redfern. You start off that chapter with a story about Nick Redfern getting a phone call. I have no idea how Nick Redfern could have ever gotten a phone call from someone that knew about the slides, let alone someone with a Southern accent. Does Tony have a Southern accent? He's the only person I can think of that would have contacted Nick Redfern.
I hesitate because I don't know that that story about Nick Redfern I got from Nick Redfern directly from Nick Redfern.
I've always wanted to ask Nick about that. Nick's one of the few people in this process I never met face to face. See, the one MUFON conference I went to, and I don't think Nick was there, but I met everybody else. It seems like in this arena at some point.
Well, I think we've I had a list of questions here, and we've kind of hit a number of those. Both Tom and Don say the slides were manipulated so that the placard was deliberately obscured, but you're saying that the slides were dark, and by bringing up the light, you have to by default have to blow out the placard if you're going to bring up the exposure and the highlights in the image. It's going to blow out the placard. Okay. All right. But so there was some manipulation.
Here's how you can.
But it wasn't done. But it wasn't done to conceal anything. It was done to. And I've done that on slides I've got from my service in Vietnam, where I have brought up the light from the background so you can see the images, because the slides are dark. They're 50 years old nearly. So I can understand that.
Again, not. Here's. I'm going to get into too much of the minutia probably, but a big problem that people had was the night of May 5th. We put out the first slide that got put out was was the image with the blurred, with the whited out placard, right? And so that was a big contention for people that we were trying to hide something, even though the next day we put everything out on the website as we promised to do. But when Richard Dolan was going on coast to coast, we're in the bowels of the National Auditorium in Mexico City. The scans that we have of the two original slides are very large files, and the enhanced version where we had brought up the whites was one that we had exported into a smaller file size. That was the only one that I could email out in an email to Richard Dolan to send to coast, and it got then attached to that radio interview, and that set a bunch of people off too. Again, it was a mistake. It shouldn't have done it, but it was not anything done with any deceptive intent. So
that wasn't the slide that was eventually decoded. I think you put a slide up on your, was it the Chromachrome site that you were running at one time. You put this high quality scan up within hours of the meeting in Mexico City, and that was the one I think the Roswell Slides group used to decode the placard.
Well, and here's the other thing, that if someone wants to go back and have Rudiak pull the sliver that we sent him and have Rudiak post that, I guarantee you that the Roswell Research Group guys will be able to deblur that one as well. I went back and looked because I felt terrible about the slide being deblurred. I felt terrible because I didn't want it to be deblurred, to be honest. And,
let me interrupt here because I'm running up against my clock again, and this time I'm paying attention to the clock.
All right, I got you. Go ahead.
We'll come back. We'll come back to this right after we make our break. As usual, I'll have a lot of stuff up on my blog, www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com, probably with some comment from Adam Dew. There's been a lot of stuff that I'd done on the blog prior to May 5th that you can see how things were going about, and I'm getting the information piecemeal, trying to keep it going as much as I can. And periodically, you and I were communicating through email, but oftentimes it didn't work out as well as I would have liked. So that's part of the problem. It wasn't that I wasn't searching out the information. I just couldn't get a response, and I was a little bit inhibited by the non-disclosure agreements as well that you and Don signed, and they were afraid that you would think that they had violated it, giving me this information. So we'll come back to all of this in just a couple of minutes, so stick around.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Believe it or not, we have returned. I'm joined by Adam Dew, he of Slidebox Media. Does Slidebox Media still exist? Is that viable?
It doesn't exist. I'm going to finish the documentary at some point. I mean, obviously, it was Slidebox Media was formed because Joseph didn't want to be out in the open with this project. He's a private person, much like my wife didn't really want me to be involved in this project because she's a private person, and she didn't want to be married to the alien guy. But Slidebox that's why Slidebox was created, was basically to protect Joseph and to create some sort of partnership agreement between Joseph and I in terms of the slides in the documentary. And since the slides were deblurred, I put the project in the back burner, and Joseph and I dissolved Slidebox. And I will finish the documentary at some point. I think it's still a great story, and I think that I think it had international interest. I think that we get so caught up in the local. The blogs here in America that that they were in Spain, they were doing TV shows about this. In Japan, they were doing TV shows about the slides. I think that that was one thing that I found fascinating, was how the slides caught on internationally.
Oh, I can tell you the hits on my blog went up 5 or 6 times when this whole thing began, and I was getting many more hits then than I am today. Although the Oak Island thing has kind of sprung up on me,
Good.
and it's helping. So basically, you're saying this wasn't created as a test for the credulity of UFO researchers. You got the slides and thought there was something alien about them, and Stan Friedman said to contact Tom Carey and brought in Don Schmitt, and that's how this whole thing began. It wasn't some kind of a test about UFO research and UFO researchers.
No, not at all. I am not a misinformation agent in any way, and I'm not out to put a crimp on anybody's hobbies or efforts otherwise. But when I was thinking about that today a little bit, and how I've been accused of ruining ufology or setting it back in any way. And I'm like, if I'm capable of doing that, like, what kind of footing were you on in the first place? If I'm able to do that, I feel like that, I'm sort of being used as a scapegoat.
Well, I don't. I think part of the problem is some of the secrecy that was involved in the whole Roswell Slides thing as it began, and how the information was leaking out. And I had actually warned Tom and Don that Tony was releasing more information than he probably should. And it was all over. And a lot of it, I mean, what he was saying was just absolutely untrue. We found out later it was untrue, based on, I guess, his enthusiasms for the project and everything where it was going. So that was part of the problem.
Early on, we tried to get Tony. We asked Tony several times to stop talking about this, and he can't control himself. But eventually, he was drumming up enough interest and buzz that I said, from my project standpoint, he was doing a great amount of free work, and so I just sort of let him go and figured that I would set the story straight eventually. Was my
and to do that, let's tackle this question. There were 2 body slides, but they're numbered 9 and 11. Is that correct?
Glad you brought that up. I have that in my notes to mention that. Yeah. So I know everyone's. So there were 2 slides, and in a collection of 400 slides that were jumbled into together. They weren't rubber banded together, so you knew that one set of slides was from one roll. It was a curated collection of slides. So you've got a couple, and there's no way to tell which 2 slides went with which roll. So I have slides number 9. It's stamped number 9 in the back, and there's a stamp on number 11. And we always found that fascinating. And trust me, I wish we had slide 10. We always thought that maybe slide 10 in our minds was one that they had given to whoever had let them go in to take the photos of the body. That was one of our, wacky theories at one point. That they kept 9 and 11.
Who came up with the idea Eisenhower was involved in this, other than the pictures of him in the slide collection?
Well, the pictures of him in the slide collection, and Catherine, Joseph's sister, did some research on Hilda in Sedona, and she found a woman who was the lead of one of the local female organizations, like a women's auxiliary, and she told Catherine that it was common knowledge that Hilda was very good friends with Mamie Eisenhower. And then so that led us to then look more into that relationship. I've heard from one of Hilda's distant relatives in Texas that there was maybe even been some relation to the Bush family when they lived in Midland, or some connection there, some friendship there. And I went to Hilda's house that she and Bernard lived in Midland, and they did in fact live close to where George W. Bush's childhood home was.
Well, one of the things I would have done had anybody bothered to ask me was to point out that Eisenhower fired general officers during the planning for the Normandy invasion because they had spoken out of school about some of the classified materials. I could not conceive of Eisenhower allowing someone in to see something that would be classified so top secret, especially civilians over whom he would have no control, and allow them to take photographs of it. I mean, that was a preposterous idea, and I tried to disavow Tom of it, but he wouldn't listen to me. I also suggested to him in December, before the BeWitness project, because I was looking for any explanation for this, and I'd gone through all the science fiction materials I could find, the movies that might have produced something like this without having really seen the slide. And I asked him flat out, is it a mummy? And he said no, and it turns out, of course, that it was. But
well, it didn't look like any, and again, in my efforts, it didn't look like any mummy that I could find online. I couldn't find, and I went to the Mutter Museum in Philadelphia at one point and had their people looking at it. And the guy at the Mutter Museum even took me into their back shelves to sort of try to show me some stuff that he thought might be similar. And I didn't see anything in my mind that fit what we had photos of.
So you had kind of eliminated the slide. I know Tom said that they looked at 500 slides. I think he blamed Tony for that as well, looking at all these slides or photographs online of mummies and could find nothing that matched. Although I think some of the people in Europe found Egyptian mummies that were similarly mutilated, I guess would be the term.
Well, and again, we were working under the assumption that there were certain dimensions involved in this creature that were out of the norm at a minimum.
But you now admit it's a mummy, right?
It certainly looks that way.
I mean, the placard gives you the story.
Yeah, No, the placard gives you the story. It does.
And-
I'm
and-
not going
and
to
when
deny. Not going to deny what the placard says. Again, I'm still in a position where, or I hold out hope that there's something else. That there's some sort of third act here with this. It's a very slim, super slim. But as I said from the beginning, Kevin, and you do give me this credit in the in your book. I did say that it's probably nothing, and that was always what I stuck to. And it was everybody else. Yeah, that poured the superlatives on, and I am guilty of going along for the ride 100%, but I was not the one putting those superlatives out there.
Oh, I know who putting the superlatives out there. I understand that completely, but the reason I bring that up is because given the whole slide, as it came out and all of that, they were able to, once a placard was read, they were able to identify the museum. And that was why I said in the introduction that we knew it had nothing to do with Roswell, because the mummy had been moved from that museum prior to July of 1947. So the Rays couldn't have been there and taken any photographs of that in that particular museum.
Oh, I see.
So that was why I had said that in the beginning, that it couldn't have anything to do with Roswell. I guess I'm still a little curious. You say that you plan to finish the documentary at some point, but it's not a priority project with you anymore.
Well, it's not nearly worth as much potential. I have to run my business based on where I can, I can support my family. I've got 3 kids. I've got obligations, so I have to find the time to. So that's so unfortunately, even though after the article in The Guardian came out a couple of weeks ago, I did get more calls from some production companies that were interested. So sadly for dear Tony Bragalia, there is still hope that this thing will get made, even though he sent me some threatening emails last week telling me that I better not dare finish this thing. So.
Well, I can understand why he wouldn't want it finished. But I mean, so the point is, I guess we're all pretty much convinced it is a mummy. Well, the only question I have, and again, it's getting into the minutia of the whole case, is you had identified Benavides as an officer in the Air Force. Remember the
I am absolutely guilty. I should not have called him Lieutenant, Kevin. I fall on my sword on that one. He was not a lieutenant. I should have vetted that. I should have vetted that better. But Elazar, to me, and I'm glad you brought up Elazar because I feel really bad that he gets lost in this. Because to me, I came out of this project feeling like coming in as a novice and a neophyte in this, thinking that the government is still lying about what happened at Roswell. I'm not saying it was alien or UFO what happened at Roswell, but after talking to people, to me, and the government's explanation in '94, that to me that there's still something that's not doesn't resonate, especially when it comes to the fact that so many people say that there were bodies involved, and the government seemed to even admit as much with their weird explanation for the bodies.
the anthropomorphic dummies that were dropped some 10 years later.
Yeah, it's so strange that they even went there. Like I don't get that part of it.
Well, I can tell you how that happened if you're interested. It was James McAndrew who thought they needed to deal with the bodies, and Colonel Weaver didn't want to do it and didn't have anything to do with it. But McAndrew thought they had to explain the bodies, and that was why he went off kind of on his own to do that and came up with that explanation for it.
All right.
But why did you think he was a lieutenant? That's, I guess.
I'd have to go back and look at my notes. There was at some point it was passed to me that was his rank. But I know that Elazar, when speaking to him and interviewing him, he may not have been a lieutenant, but he was in close quarters with some of the famous names that were involved in the case.
Well, anybody at Roswell would have been in close quarters with them.
Well, there you go. Yes. And Elazar, the stories he tells, I don't think that he is making up his stories wholesale. I don't think that they're coming from nothing. I don't think that he is just part of some mass psychosis that happened in Roswell. I don't believe that. So.
Well, I was just kind of curious, and that really is really into the minutia because it was really kind of an unimportant fact, and except that with all the other stuff coming out, you say, well, gee, this is wrong too.
It does. Well, whatever. But to me, the Elazar being involved is important in that was why that was the most important. So if we got to a point with those slides where we couldn't. We thought it was just going to end up a mystery. We thought we vetted the slides. We knew they were authentic. We knew they were authentic to the 1940s. And then we wanted to find someone that had seen aliens or claimed to have seen aliens and show them the slides and get their impressions. To me, that was the next logical step in trying to play this thing out. And that was how we ended up there at Elazar's door. And, I hope that Elazar doesn't get his testimony doesn't get totally lost because of the slide placard being deciphered. But I'm afraid that it will.
I'm running up against the next break here, and I was going to take the last segment to kind of talk about the end of the program. But I'm wondering if is there something that you'd like to discuss for a couple of minutes in the next segment before we cut you loose and I do my swan song, so to speak? Is there something that you wanted to talk about? Have we covered the
you don't have anything else?
Like
you don't have anything else pressing?
I have other questions that I think you and I can discuss through email and whatnot, and we can put up on the blog. I think I've gotten the points that I wanted to get to right away, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity to give maybe a few other questions or make a couple of other statements if you'd like to do that.
Well, I will say I did give up. Well, all right. Why don't you split the next segment then? Just give me a couple minutes and I'll sort of make a few final points.
I've got to break away then. You've heard Adam Dew is going to hang around for a couple of extra minutes. There'll be more stuff on the blog at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com, which I said real fast, and we will be back right after this, so stick around.
The Earth is under ever-increasing pressure from untenable lifestyles and growing populations. Yet, viable answers seem in short supply. What if I told you there's an ancient form that can empower you to take charge of your life? What if your entire family could be enfolded and supported by life itself, finding safe passage through challenging times? I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Art School, with great news: an upcoming series of leading-edge online affordable classes based in an ancient form of shamanism, easily learned and used by your entire family. Galactic Shamanism, Art of the Ancients, Key to Tomorrow are a series of online adult and children's lessons instructing your entire family on natural law, how to cooperate with and be supported by the powers of the universe. Visit findyourpathhome.com to find these unique and powerful classes.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
I am back with Adam Dew. We're going to talk for a couple more minutes, and then I'm going to give make a few comments as well. Adam, you had some things that you wanted to say or to close this out, at least this quick interview?
Well, I wanted to thank you. I think it's nice to finally meet you after all these years in this thing. But, I think the thing that bothered me the most about the chapter in your book about us was saying that that Hilda's story was some sort of a red herring, and it was just, to me, that was the main reason why I was involved in this project in the first place, was because of Hilda. So I just wanted to make that point clear. And then also that this was a hoax, to me, is offensive. And I've never seen anyone come with any proof or any sort of it's just people want it to be a hoax. They want to claim it's a hoax. And I think it's sort of a part of the way that people talk these days in sort of hyperbolic terms that
Well, I
people
think
put these labels on things.
I think you look at it from this, the perspective I come at it. The alien autopsy was clearly a hoax. They staged the whole thing. They made the film. They created the dummies. They did all of that sort of thing. And we look at this. We've got sort of alien autopsy light because all we've got are 2 slides of a mummy. And I think they were thinking that that was created or that was used to precipitate the hoax. And I think that's where they're going. Talking to you and talking to Tom and Don, I don't think there was any hoax really involved in this. It was just a lot of excitement about we have the smoking gun for the Roswell case, and we're going to present it in Mexico City at some point, thanks to Jaime Maussan's showmanship, I guess would be the word.
And I think that for me, when I look back on it, this was a roller coaster, and we had moments where we certainly were like, what are we doing? This is not, it can't be what we think it might be. And then I would have days where I would be looking out my bedroom window and see a white van and think, why is that white van there? And your mind starts to go there. And for someone who's never been involved in this, it's easy to let yourself get swept up in it. It was an interesting thing to be involved with. And, if anybody was offended by it, I'm sorry. I know that's the apology that no one likes to hear and no one gives you credit for. But it was. I know that this is something that people take very personally on both sides. But I think it was a matter of people not knowing me was part of the problem too. I've had conversations with one member of the research group, very cordial conversations, and sadly, none of those guys agreed to sort of take their moment in the sun and be in my documentary. I think that would have been a great way to wrap things up. I think that's one of the things that sort of has stopped me, is that none of those guys will sit for an interview to sort of to gloat with me on their behalf. But
I mean, gloat may not be the right word you want to use there.
Oh, there was some gloating. Oh, there was a lot of gloating.
You mean gloat by on their part, not on your part. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, listen, Adam, I'll let you go.
Hey,
I appreciate this. I'll be in communication with you. I'll send you the link as we talk about sometimes, and put up an entry on the blog at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com, and then you'll be, of course, allowed to comment on it as well. I think we've hashed out a lot of stuff, and I think we answered the questions that I had. I had a long list of questions that people had sent me, but in our discussions, I mean, all the questions pretty well got answered. So thank you for joining us here on A Different Perspective.
My pleasure. I will do my best to answer some questions on the blog as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, Kevin. Take care.
Good night. As I've talked about for several weeks, I said that this would be the series finale, but there's no need to really burn that bridge. And what I've talked about with Rob McConnell and everything was that we'll take a hiatus here to get things kind of straight in my mind. But I'd like to thank Rob McConnell for the opportunity and for his help and guidance in producing the program and helping me with the things that I needed help with. And I'd like to thank the listeners for making this show number 2 on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, at least for a couple of months. I certainly appreciate that. I'd like to thank most of the guests. I say most of them because some of them were really annoying. But without them, you'd just have been treated to me week after week, which would have become boring, I think, very quickly if that had been just me talking on and on incessantly about UFOs, although it's a topic I can talk about get very long-winded on. And I'd like to note that the show allowed me to interview many people who I might not have been able to talk to or might not have been willing to talk with me otherwise. There are some who refused the invitation to promote their books, which struck me as odd, even though I might not agree with their perception of their books. I've always accepted the invitations on other programs to talk about my books and my work, figuring that if I'm going to write a book about a topic, I should be willing to defend that topic to all who might want to ask questions about it and not get angry with them for asking tough questions or disagreeing with what I had to say. And I've also thought of the show as a way of exploring many facets of the paranormal, but I tried to keep it fair to all of those who came on the program, allowing them to explain their points, as we just did with Adam Dew. As you heard, he got an opportunity to give his point of view, and I think it's something that hasn't been really examined through the whole Roswell Slides fiasco, and that's really the best word for it. It was fiasco. But I allowed the guests to explain their points of view, and you know that I asked some tough questions, and we got into some interesting discussions, and I always tried to dig a little deeper than sometimes is the case on shows like that. Oftentimes the hosts look at it as a way of, I guess, just promoting books and not really worrying about the accuracy of some of the things said. I always tried to get to the accurate statements and find out what was going on. But I did find it difficult to deal with some of the guests who didn't have a good grasp of their topics, and I wondered why some of them had written books when those books provided nothing new but were a rehash of what has been published before, and you asked them questions and they didn't really understand some of that, and that was something was interesting to me, and I thought that we could explore that together on that. And I've been accused of that as well, but I think Roswell in the 21st century as an offering, it prevents a different perspective of that case, and we talked a little bit about that tonight as well. I thought of it as a dispassionate examination of the evidence and the testimony, and I really was trying to give a good look at what Roswell was about as we understood it today, not as we understood it in 1991 or 1995 or 1997. And Encounter in Desert, which is about the Socorro case, I thought of as doing the same thing, an in-depth look at the Socorro landing, and it was inspired by Ben Moss and Tony Angiola, as I've said many times. As we were talking on the program, they said a couple of things that fired my imagination, and I wanted to get beyond that, and they didn't answer one of the questions adequately, which was the three additional witnesses, and I wondered if they had talked to or seen the police records of that, and by going into it, I found the documentation that supported that. And I also found other things about the case that hadn't been publicized very well. So I thought it was important to do a book about that. And that's what happened there. So I used that to expand the case by adding new and little known detail that I was able to find. And it was brought up about the some of the things that Tony Angiola and Ben Moss had said. But I'm kind of winding down the program right now. And you know, I know a lot of people think, well, you know, a 1 hour show once a week isn't a big deal. But for me, there was a lot of prep in it. I wanted to make sure I'd read the books. I wanted to make sure I understood what the topic was. I wanted to understand where the author of the book was coming from or the researchers were coming from. So I spent a lot of time kind of setting up all of that sort of thing. And I had to deal with a couple of guests who canceled at the last minute, and that was always a lot of fun. Rob told me that I spent way too much time in prep, but I wanted to know the answers to the questions before I asked them, or I wanted to have a good feel of where the questions were going to go, and we wouldn't get into something we really didn't need to get into. So, you know, I brought some of the stress on myself, and I brought some of the problems on myself because, you know, I was trying to make it a good program with good information and good entertainment. There are many fine shows on the X Zone Broadcast Network, which I don't mention often enough, which I should. And you can find that at XZBN, or if you happen to be in Canada or England, that would be xzbn.net. And take a look at it. I'm sure that there's something on there that would interest everybody, and you should give them a listen and understand what's going on there. I know that the hosts of those programs are deeply involved in their topics that they discuss, and they're kind of the subject matter experts, as we used to say in the military. They provide interesting commentary on their subjects. So, as I said, I don't ever mention it often enough, but you really should go to the xzbn.net website and take a look at what they have to say. So I was going to kind of leave on a high note and bow out of this, but as I say, you know, as I thought of it as kind of a finale, but talking to Rob, he thought maybe a hiatus would be a better thing, and he told me that I could come back when I was ready to do the program again, and I appreciate that, and I think long and hard about it. I mean, it's been a blast to do the program. It's a joy to talk to Rob prior to the program, and as we're winding things down at the end of the program. We have a lot of fun doing that, and there's things that go on in the commercial breaks that you all don't get to listen to. But it's been a lot of fun to do that. And so I wanted to just thank everybody for listening. And instead of saying I'll be back in 167 hours, I'll be back sometime later. So thanks for listening, and keep up the good work.